Welcome, you lucky listeners, to yet another episode of
Not Your Common Conversation.
I'm Omar Henderson, along with my co-host,
Chris Downing.
And today we have the pleasure of sitting with and interviewing Mr. Latif Rashid. You want to give us your full name? Because I feel like I may have cut corners.
Fine.
That's fine?
Yeah, that's fine.
And what you do.
Yeah, what are you doing? What's your title? My wife got on my case when I was talking to Chris about you the other day. She's like, you're not even paying him respect for what his title is. And I was like, I know him. He's a mental health professional. He's an old friend of mine. I mean,
But what's your official title?
Yeah, what's your official title?
Mental health therapist.
Okay.
But you're a crisis interventionalist.
I did crisis intervention for about 13 years, yeah.
Okay. So you have some knowledge in this field.
A little bit.
If you can kind of share with us, what you've seen or what you've learned or what you've experienced throughout your career in that particular field in regards to mental health. Is it mental health with just anybody, or is it mental health with particular, is it men, black men, young, youth? Who mental health in terms of?
I think before the idea that has been expanded beyond just mental health is behavioral health as well.
Okay.
Because the idea of mental health, I think, this is my speculation, was kind of insinuating weakness of mentality or something of that nature.
Right.
But it also didn't include behavioral aspects, this disjointed, So behavioral aspects like addiction, like compulsivity and things like that. Whereas like OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, a person may be gathering potato chip bags, which I've seen a whole wall of potato chip bags, but the obsession is the anxiety or the itch, so to speak, that a person has to scratch in order to feel calm. So they do whatever they do. So yeah,
there's these sort of tics or what was the right word? Inflictions or things, behavior patterns.
Right. They might appear to be hoarding.
Right.
A hoarder, so to speak, but the fact that they're actually satisfying a need to calm themselves through.
Right.
Like there's trichotillomania, is pulling the hair.
Yeah.
Or scratching the skin, things like that, or even sometimes burning oneself.
Wow.
With cigarettes and things like that. Something about controlling the pain and the urgency of just kind of coming back to a state of a calm, so to speak. So
what gets a person? A person doesn't necessarily. I guess some may be born with that, but what gets a person to do that? Like, is there something that happens in their early childhood or something that brings that on?
Well, I don't know about that specifically in terms of that age population in terms of whatever, but speaking generally, there was a research study done in the mid-'90s with in combination with Kaiser Permanente. They studied. They had over 1,000 clinicians following the population for several years, for like maybe 15, 20 years.
Wow.
And that looking at certain patterns of behavior, and they called it the ACEs study.
ACEs.
ACE, list like the ACE card.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
ACEs stand for adverse childhood exposures or adverse childhood experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And you heard about that?
No. It just sounds familiar because of the training that we've all had before.
Right.
In transformation.
Right.
We it starts with
behavior
it started
patterns.
with something that happened by the time we were 5 years old or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. They had a list of potential problem states, in terms of violence in the home, addiction in the home, a unsettled atmosphere, so to speak, or incarceration, substance use, mental health issues, but also physical health issues in terms of heart issues or the like, cancer or whatever the case is. And they saw over a period of time that those persons who had maybe three to five different things ticked off on their list, they had a higher potentiality of premature death, you know what I mean, a higher prospect for incarceration,
Right.
Possibility for divorce, and so forth and so on. An amazing study.
That's interesting, huh?
You know, it's interesting. Well, I'm trying to get away from saying that's interesting, but let me say what you just said kind of complements a conversation Chris and I had 2 episodes ago with regards to crime, and specifically crime in this area. Chris was saying how he was watching something on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just simply noticing a lot of crime.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
the crime is being done by younger folks. It
It's
seems
being
like
done by
increasingly
folks.
younger people.
And then the mayor of the city, and I'm sure this is in every city, their response is, well, we need more police and stricter laws.
Right.
But, you know, it was really interesting. There was a shooting recently in Brooklyn, and you could hear one of the citizens say, these kids don't respect any laws. So how is more laws going to make a difference? And so we had concluded that there is a trauma involved in which ignites these kids or any criminal to commit these acts.
Right.
Is that something you could speak to or confirm, or I don't know? Have you
put you on the spot? But
yeah, right. I mean, has that?
Do you see any patterns or any relatable?
Well, what he just said kind of does, because with all these, you know, I don't know, accumulated
behavior patterns,
illnesses, whether you know there's trauma in the life, and then there's physical problems. You know, the person is likely to commit a crime, have divorce, go to jail,
right.
And so this is why I'm bringing it up, because you know you work close with a government body. I'm not going to say which one, but it is, and why is it? Maybe you can answer this question with your observation of it. Taking these tools of investigating mental health into the homes where a lot of these crimes are happening. Is there an effort for that, or is there a concern for that? Is there a question about that? You understand what I'm asking?
A little bit.
In other words, instead of making more laws, why wouldn't it be a good idea for the government officials or the mayor or what else to really look at
to get to the crux of the matter?
Get to the crux of the matter. Either you got to do it at a familial level, or you got to do it at the level of elementary school, like, you know, being on the watch for the traumas that these children are experiencing that could lead to.
Yeah. I think more and more that I'm hearing states or jurisdictions are trying to implement crisis teams and the like, which are, they have a different mixture depending on the jurisdiction or the state, but they have
and the money, I'm sure.
Yeah, they have police personnel given some, I forgot the name of training, emergency, some kind of
training,
crisis training, crisis mental health training, in tandem with clinicians. They are called. They go to homes and try to extinguish the fire, so to speak, proverbially speaking, and that has some meaning. But I think your point, Omar, in terms of trauma, I think that's right on point as well. That there's a lot of work being done in the area of trauma. Everything is now trauma sensitive or whatever. Everything's like reverse. You know, what is the king that touches everything? Midas. It's a reverse Midas thing.
Right.
It reverts from gold to something different. You know what I mean?
Right.
So there's a few premier clinicians in the field, researchers in the field. One bestseller on the what do you call it? Best.
the book,
That.
bestsellers.
Right.
Best-selling author.
Yeah, best-selling author. Yeah.
One of them is named Bessel van der Kolk. He wrote a book called "The Body Keeps the Score."
Ooh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
What's that about?
It was just about that. You know what I mean? It's about what he oohed to.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it means that your experiences are cumulative.
Yeah.
Your experiences. Your body remembers those experiences. And accumulates either a level of stress or relief, depending on how it responds to those experiences. Exactly.
Let me ask you some questions. No, you're right on point. You're right.
Well, I mean, consider if you went to a different amusement park every day for I don't know, from the time you were 5 to 25, and got awed, then by the time you're 35, you're like, life is great, life is a joy, I'm so happy, and that's that relief. But if you from the age of your 5 to 25, you had to walk out and look both ways to dodge a bullet, that accumulates stress, and it's stress on top of stress on top of stress. And that accumulation,
and the body has,
and then it has
some kind of memory of all that.
Oh yeah, body has a memory of that, exactly. And then you end up suffering ill effects. Like I don't know. It's interesting because I remember once talking to this guy. He was some kind of mystic, whatever. But he said that he had a client patient who had breast cancer.
Right.
And he found out that the what he concluded was her breast cancer was related to her thinking she was incapable of being a good mother. So it was tied into her ability to nurture.
I think that has merit.
Yeah.
I mean, how you process things, your experience. I mean, it's a what's the saying? You're a sum total of your experiences. Or
you are your sum total of your experience.
Yeah, and so that's why we have to really be careful what we're around, what we're allowing our children to be around.
Yeah.
And to experience,
Absolutely. There was a doctor named Naomi Raman. She said that we can, the expectation that we can be immersed in suffering and loss on a daily basis and not be touched by it is as ridiculous as ridiculous as expecting to be able to walk through water without getting wet.
Yeah, for sure.
It's so. I have. I know someone who spends a lot of time watching YouTube videos about strange phenomenon or about ill-gotten behaviors or, like serial killers or whatever.
How did that occur to you?
And then I'm like, you're feeding yourself all this stuff that's like haunting your brain, and then how are you ever going to relax? It's so funny. I remember years ago I had a patient. And I was like, dude, how do you relax? He said, by playing Halo. Halo is a first shooter game. Wow. How do you relax trying to survive with aliens trying to kill you?
Yeah.
How is that relaxing?
Yeah, it's a lot to...
That's just stress.
That's a lot to process.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, interesting. So Bessel van der Kolk is an expert in the field, but there's a brother, everybody's brother, but this is an African-American brother named Resma Menachem. He wrote a powerful book on the same list of top
bestsellers.
The bestsellers. He's a best-selling author.
Yeah. Well, you want that. You want that when you put a book out because that.
Yeah.
The name of the book the title might mislead you until you get into the text of the book. It's called My Grandmother's Hands.
Okay.
My Grandmother's Hands. Okay.
Right. Powerful book. So if you think about Bessel van der Kolk's book, The Body Keeps the Score, this is goes in even deeper in my estimation. And that he talks about so many things about transgenerational trauma.
Yeah.
And he talks about the fact of ghost trauma, not knowing exactly where, what happened, when happened, and who did it happen to, but it can settle into families so much so that over several generations it can become to be perceived as be a norm for that particular family.
Right.
Where actually it's trauma unprocessed or unprocessed, you know what I mean? So It's for things that are dissonant traumas that can't be integrated into one's meaning spheres, that they come out in peculiar ways. So some of the kids, in my estimation, they are reacting out or vibrating out this trauma that happened to them, undistinguished them, but and them unknowing it from where it came, but they are actually acting it out. It's pathetic, really.
It's crazy.
And it's hard to pinpoint where exactly it came from. Unless you.
I mean, the news that a 12-year-old and a 13-year-old beat up a man and killed him. I mean,
it seems like I hear that stuff all the time. But
I mean, amazing. You know what I mean? So how would they process that? I mean, in terms of intention,
right?
Is this spontaneous or is this planned?
It makes you scratch your head. I mean, I oftentimes I look at the news or look at stories or read stories or see things on the internet, and I just go, I don't know how. I was telling in one of our previous podcasts that I think that most African Americans through just slavery are born into trauma. Like what happened in that process of slavery, over 400 years ago, still has an effect on us. I mean, you could call that, maybe that's a ghost trauma. I mean, it's still, we're kind of born into it from the simple fact that slavery was just a heinous, awful thing that happened. And so we all kind of have that. It still happens. I mean, you get paranoid. People, sometimes we say, oh man, they're racist, but because we're paranoid. I just saw the movie a few months ago, Origin. I don't know if you're familiar with Ava DuVernay, based on a book called The Caste System, and they break down.
I heard about
the caste. It's by his sister Isabel. I can't recall her. Her last name, but so she paralleled the caste system from India, the untouchables, and what happened in Germany with the Jewish folks, and then what happened through slavery, and it's all tied in together. And that racism is simply a byproduct. It's a tool of the caste system. Racism is a social construct that just started around the early 1600s. And so, but the caste system, the fact that people, someone has to be at the bottom and someone has to be at top, that person's at the bottom is traumatized. I liken it to, I imagine being in jail, you have a caste system, you got the tough guys and you got the new people that come in and you've got to navigate as a new inmate. I've heard this from some inmates. You've got to navigate and establish who you are. It's just a survival, it's like animals,
Right.
And you've got to try. So that just like any, I'm speaking the word animal, if you took you got these dogs out here that people try to train to be killers, and by nature they're just dogs. But you put them in a situation where they have to survive and look out for themselves, life and death. That dog, that person, whomever, that living thing, is going to be traumatized. Is going to come out with a certain behavior pattern that's going to be hard to shake. And then you take that person and put them in a normal situation, and it's not normal for them. So I can imagine those. We have to be careful about, and I say for my own personal self, when I find that there's drama. And
drama and trauma.
And they go hand in hand. Drama causes trauma, and I have to be careful. It's where I am right now today. Like I can't process that because I'm not going to allow myself to be in that energy because of my own mental health, which could affect my physical health and my spiritual health.
Right.
So we have to be. To all the points you're making, I think one has to be careful of what they put themselves through.
Yeah, exactly. One of the things that was obviated or was fleshed out is that most of the traumas, when we think about trauma, we think about, the bridge collapse in Baltimore.
Baltimore.
We think about the tsunami and things like that. or the breaking of the levees in Louisiana, things like that.
Sure.
Those are traumatic, quote unquote, can be classified as traumatic experiences, but most traumas are relational traumas. Traumas due to the relationship, the violation of boundaries, the violation of belief systems. You know what I mean?
Socially, I mean families.
Families, police, criminal behavior. You know what I mean? These are relational traumas.
Right.
So the fact that I was telling somebody, or maybe Omar, when comparing, I went to Indonesia after the tsunami.
Wow.
I was with a group of psychologists, and that it was just amazing trip. You know what I mean? But in retrospect, and interesting. Well, I won't tell that story.
Right.
But one of the things that really caught my attention is the fact that the people were doing well considering the devastation that they had endured.
Right.
But when you compare the way that they were rebounding or becoming resilient or demonstrating resilience as compared to those who were in Louisiana and dislocated about the adversity that they had suffered,
Yeah.
that because that trauma in Indonesia was quote unquote a act of nature or act of God, compared to one that was an act of man,
Failures.
those those failures and those shoddy repairs or whatever they were supposed to do, those people in Indonesia would get over their trauma much quicker.
Right.
Even though the devastation was tremendously, multiplied times 10 or 50, whatever, they'll get over their trauma much quicker than the violation of trust in the situation in Louisiana.
So it's not just the trauma itself, but how the trauma is dealt with.
It's not exactly. So it's not the event. It's what happens inside of the person because of the event.
Right.
So, as they say, that trauma can be so impactful that it can dislocate person's sense of purpose. So people come out of the trauma fog or whatever fog state, wandering, not knowing who they are or where they're going. I mean, if you really think about it, it really brings to mind our history for sure.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The will to survive and to press through that is an amazing story.
Yeah, for sure.
So, for the sake of the title or the context of this, because Chris started this out, he wanted to talk about health in general. And, when people hear that, we automatically go to physical health, right? So, we contend, and I'm sure that plenty of other people out there do, that the two are intertwined. And you kind of touched on the subject earlier. So, how does trauma have an impact on one's physical health? Like, what are the manifestations of that?
Right.
What are the signs of that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm asking you.
Oh.
You're the expert.
I mean,
Yeah, interesting.
I'm asking you.
I mean, trauma may, depending on, the impact or the source of it, it can look multifaceted in terms of persons having what do you call it? Intrusive imagery. You know what I mean? Nightmares.
Right.
Shortness of breath. Overwhelmed with a sense of grief or overwhelmed by a situation. In terms of a violation of the belief system,
Right?
Core beliefs like we have core beliefs that bad persons will die before good persons, or that the young will outlive the old. You know what I mean? That there is a just and fair world. You know what I mean? That if I do what's quote unquote been told to me, that good things will always happen to me. Those are core beliefs that we have as people. It's not about particular faith traditions. It's about people. But when those core belief systems are violated, it knocks a person out. I mean, knocks a person for a
loop.
A loop, really, because their whole world, literally their world of meaning is destroyed or compromised or constrained because they didn't have that, because life is not supposed to happen like that. Life is supposed to happen like A, B, C, or whatever
Right.
case is.
Right.
So what comes to mind, sorry to interrupt you, what comes to mind is a child. So imagine a child grows up in a household and from a certain age, let's say from birth to 5 years old, they're living a certain way with possibly both parents. And then at some point that gets interrupted. They're starting to, at that point from 0 to 5, they're starting to develop, a pattern of how things should be. And then that totally gets interrupted by, it could be physical abuse put on someone in the house, themselves, sexual abuse, drug abuse, and disrupts that whole thing.
Or divorce.
Or divorce.
or the passing of a parent.
Incarceration. So that pattern is broken.
Yeah.
And now
Is killed.
it gets compounded by some other complications of those other people trying to either hide or not deal with it head on, and it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
Because nobody, yep.
And then they go out in the outside world, and so you can see how it can sort of trickle down theory, where this whole thing can just, avalanche on somebody. And you don't, at an early age, then you go from 5 to 10 and 10 to 15, and you don't realize, like you said earlier, the norm, I call it this functioning dysfunction, becomes the norm and the standard, and you now you're a teen, or you're 17, you go out in the world and someone says do this, and it just catapults, and you don't. I mean, this happens especially when lack of funds and resources and education and all that comes into play. It's usually it's a list of things. It gets layered, it's multi-layered, and then someone says, how did this person get this way? You end up in jail, or you end up, dead, or any number of things, and you don't realize. I tell people all the time, I don't have a child. I've mentored children. I still do. I'm in children's lives because as a human being, it's important for me to give them the try to put upon them something, create a nurturing environment for a human. I was telling someone the other day. I said, honestly, I'm 59. I'm just learning stuff over the last 10 to 20 years. So I can imagine you got young folks out there in their teens, 20s, 30s, and you're most of us nobody teaches you this stuff, and you just kind of flubbing through the whole thing. I see young folks out there, and I just know that they're just sort of trying to figure it out with all the pressure. Unlike when we grew up, you got the internet, you're inundated with bombarded with all this stuff, and so
I would dare to say that the administrations their approach to education and development is antiquated.
Oh, for sure.
And what I mean, and why I say that is because, so there's a saying that youth is wasted on the young.
Right.
So, you when you're turning 55, 60, 65 or whatever, all of a sudden things become much clearer for you. And the only thing missing is the vitality and energy that you had when you were 25.
Sure.
Right. So, you're like, all of a sudden your life changes. You're taking it on different things. You're moving with a greater awareness. And why I'm bringing this up is because I think about, let me get to my point. These children today, how much would they benefit knowing what we're talking about, or being in an environment that supports being on the lookout for trauma? Like right now, we're looking back at our lives and saying, oh, that was an instance that actually catapulted me in this direction because I made this decision. Maybe I don't have to make that decision. What if children are empowered at an early age to really see clearly, oh, I don't have to make this decision this way or this choice this way. If I go that way, I could get in trouble. They're ill-equipped. And so they kind of fumble through life and not recognizing that, which brings me to another point. I want to ask you this earlier. But you look like you want to respond to what I was about to say.
Well, I want to respond to something that Chris said.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. There's a statement by this well-known departed family therapist named Virginia Satir. She had this saying, I think it's powerful anyway. She said that every child needs 4 hugs a day for survival, 8 hugs a day for maintenance, and 12 hugs a day for growth.
Wow. Yeah.
Wow.
So when you're looking at a household that's bereft of those endearing interactions, what you're saying can come about easily. You know what I mean? That they're fumbling through.
Yeah.
It was a big thing when we were coming up. They say, okay, that person doesn't have any home training.
Right.
Yeah.
That didn't include murder. I mean,
Right.
that included washing your hands.
Washing your hands. You might have spoke out of turn or something. Right. Didn't call somebody Mr. or right. Yeah. It's been coming. So it's what you reinforce. You can either reinforce it this way or you can reinforce it that way.
Yeah. I mean, so they're grappling, as you said. I mean, they're really trying to figure it out on their own. You know what I mean? But their models, when you think about, divorce in many of our families, you know what I mean? It's not a black-white thing, but it's just families.
Yeah, humans.
That one thing about that, while that ACEs study might demonstrate the fact that how many families or how many kids over a period of time succumbed to, relational traumas in terms of violence in the homes and so forth and so on. But it makes you really wonder that, okay, did they come from families that, were divorced and all that? They may have. But the other thing that's very interesting is that how many of them were exposed to the manner in which couples would make up with each other. They would see the breakups or see the arguments, but don't see the repair mechanisms or systems in place.
Right.
So they don't know how to do that.
That's just that's
because we didn't know how to do that.
Right.
I mean, we know how to have an argument.
Right.
We know how to
reconcile.
Yeah, we don't know how to reconcile. They've never seen reconciliation.
Right.
That's interesting. So that drives me to my next question is that, people may hear trauma and may think that trauma happens in a grandiose scenario. Like trauma happens when the parent leaves.
Right.
Trauma happens when they're stricken by the parent, or one of their beliefs is violated. But
sometimes it's subtle.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. Sometimes it's subtle. Sometimes it's very. We would look at it and be like, "Oh man, just rub dirt on it." You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah,
right. Go back outside.
Yeah, go back out. Exactly.
Right.
But and so I say that because I'd like for you to help our audience, become aware of the very subtle traumatic things that make a huge difference in a child's life. I mean, I have an experience, with that. From the time of being 6 years old, I carried out this decision for most of my life until I was like 56. So that was 50 years. 50 years of living like life is this particular way, all because of one little thing that happened between me and a bunch of playmates.
Yeah.
So there are big T traumas and little T traumas. That's basically what you're saying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I dare to say that you can distinguish it as big T and little T, but the impact is the same.
The impact again is not the external; it's the internal. What did it mean to the person?
Right.
Who was
how you process
who suffered it? You know what I mean? So it could be anything in terms of little T traumas. It could be a teacher not calling you in class. You know what I mean? It could be issues of colorism. You know what I mean? In terms of the lighter kids get the prize, and the darker kids sit in the back of the bus, in the back of the class. And then they stay after school and so forth and so on.
Yeah.
Or that you don't get you have to wait to get the appropriated lunch. You know what I mean? because your parents can't afford to send you for lunch, so you got to come for early lunch or early breakfast or whatever case.
Or it
Those
could
are
be,
embarrassing.
Yeah, or it could be, one kid dresses better than me.
Yeah.
Or this kid, he draws better than I do.
Or you see with a lot of female kids where, the kid is, the parent or older person says, oh, you're so pretty, you're so this. And so they have to measure up to that. You're making this whole thing, this whole deal where they didn't even have that.
Right.
Which probably has more to do with you than the kid.
Right.
And you're impressing on your kid. What you haven't been complete about.
or that's a good point. Or for a male, a kid, throws a football, and all of a sudden his dad's like, "You're a great football player," and then he goes on, to play football when he
never wanted to play football.
He may never have wanted to play football in the first place,
Right.
But he was like, "Well, this is the trajectory that I was on, and this is what it was expected."
That's
of me.
what I wanted of my son.
Exactly.
So that's
oh my God.
Yeah, that's
Oh
what
my
I
God.
wanted. So therefore, you really don't have a decision.
That's a good question for us and for our audience. Like, how much of your life is spent trying to please your parents?
Yeah, or someone.
Yeah, or someone. Yeah, who's not you.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So what can you share with? Because I want to be proactive about this. I think we've done a good job of sort of outlining all the issues.
That's a good point.
And if you're human, you listen. We're human. I believe that we're probably all born flawed. Okay, it's just the matter of being a human. I think how you go about. Listen, we're all given another day with grace. If you're blessed enough, you're given another day to be a better person. What kind of things can you bestow or speak on that would help dysfunction or bad behavior or something to look out for?
Well, I think everybody needs to know that they matter. You know what I mean? I think that's an overarching piece. Everybody matters, you know what I mean? So, but in terms of when people are traumatized, that it can be approached in a couple ways. That there is, in terms of we have two nervous systems, the automatic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. And this sympathetic nervous system, as they say, is fight or flight. Mm-hmm. And the parasympathetic is, they call it rest and digest. Because when either one is triggered, the first one triggered, the sympathetic nervous system, the need for your appetite is contained. I mean, you're not wanting to eat something, a hamburger or fish sandwich or whatever the case is. You want to get out of Dodge.
You say you lose your appetite.
You lose your appetite. You
right.
lose it because it's about survival.
Right.
As opposed to when you're in a calm situation or in a situation where you have connection, where you have safety and you have significance, then you can just chill.
Right.
You can chill. So many of our families or many of our folks that we're thinking about or conversing about, that they don't have that atmosphere that's nurturing them in terms of just atmosphere. You don't have to have the full refrigerator. You don't have to have A, B, C, or whatever the case is, but just can you have a space of calm, a space where it validates you rather than disempowering you. It validates you through embracing you, you know what I mean? To helping you navigate or helping you arrive at meanings that are potentiating rather disempowering. You know what I mean? So I think that those things are very key in themselves.
So that gives a whole new meaning to dinner parties and picnics. Yeah, because you come together and you're kind of relaxed and you're at ease and you're validated because everybody's like, hey, we're so happy to see you, right?
Yeah,
and
right.
you feel like you matter, and so you're like, yeah, and I want to dig into that potato salad.
Right.
So all it becomes is a sympathetic nervous system event.
What they say, one thing they say is that resilience happens in the absence of threat. You know what I mean?
Oh my gosh!
Ooh, wow.
So the perception of threat is the key point in terms of this situation you're talking about, and what's threatening to you may not be threatening to me.
Right, exactly.
You know, like I mean, what people who have phobic reactions towards clowns, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
To me, it's just, it's just boring, it's a boring experience, whatever the case is.
Right.
But someone else has a genuine phobic, reaction towards a clown, you know what I mean?
Yeah, or a deadline.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
A deadline. Yeah, as a musician, if you, if I have a deadline, all of a sudden I'm like, I'm practicing and everything is not right. But if there's no deadline, I'm just having fun with it. I'm learning material. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So that is so key what you just said. And I only brought up the fact that a deadline because I wanted to make it relatable to most people, because most people have deadlines either with bills or something you get done around the house or at work,
which causes anxiety.
Which causes anxiety
right.
and interferes with resiliency, which interferes with creativity. There may be a way of getting something done another way other than what you think of. But with that deadline looming, you can't think of that other way because you're focused on the deadline.
Right. And then possibly anger starts to...
If somebody interferes, my God.
Closer you get to the deadline.
Closer you get to the deadline, somebody's tapping on your shoulder. What?
Right.
But you see, I'm focused on this deadline.
Right.
3 weeks out on the 14th,
Time
man.
is affecting your attitude, right?
Yeah, but you won't... There's a saying, he said, that anger is a way of not being afraid.
We talked about that last week.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Well, so I quoted a guy on one of the, I guess it was Instagram, Roster Brother. He said, "Anger is the punishment that you give, the emotional punishment that you give yourself for someone else's behavior."
Oh, wow. That's powerful.
Yeah, right?
Yeah,
right.
For sure. Yeah, so anger is legion in our community, you know what I mean? And justifiably, we have a lot of things to be angry about, you know what I mean? But how do we carry the anger? You know what I mean? How do we unpack it, or how do we give it space to emote, but not to overwhelm us in such a way that it's disabilitating or debilitating, rather?
Well, that's really interesting, man.
Yeah.
There's a lot right now to be angry about.
Yeah, there is.
If you're, regardless of what side politically you're on, you can be angry about that. But regardless of what side religiously you're on, you can be angry about that. Regardless of what side socially you're on, you can be angry about that. What side sexually you're on. There's like plenty to be angry about.
But that's, again, when you say there's plenty to be angry about, when I think of that and you saying that's an induced behavior. Like you're choosing to be angry, right? So you can, just like you mentioned about the clowns. The clown could make someone have anxiety, or the clown could be just a clown, and you process a different way. So I think we have. I mean, because I've done this on myself. There are things that I've been disappointed about or that made me angry, and I go, wait a minute. I catch myself and calm down enough to say, this shouldn't supersede my day. Like the deadline you mentioned. I have that with clients sometimes where, I used to get, now I'm not as much because I have a lot more experience and understanding about it, and I got, buffers that sort of lead me. But I used to go, oh man, this deadline, I'm getting, I'm getting pissed off. I'm getting pissed off at myself. I'm making everybody wrong. Everybody, anybody who walks around me, I'm
gotta be them.
Right, gotta be them. But now I'm able to, in a more mature, most of the time, I'm able to calm myself down to say, listen. Well, first of all, I try not to be angry in general. I just, like my threshold, I try to just really minimize my, not anger is not the first thing that comes up. It's like, that's interesting. How do I want to proceed with this? How do I want to go about? Why? Because I think being older, I have, but this much time left. You know, it's like having when you got a full tank of gas, you drive all over the place. When you got a quarter tank, it's like, hey, I can go here and I can go here. Okay, so let's think about this before I go there. I need to think about where I'm going.
That's good to know because I thought it was just me.
So it's just like that. The same thing with life. It's like, hey, I have, I've experienced a lot and I've enjoyed a lot. I've been angry about a lot. Okay, Chris, you don't have to be angry about that. That doesn't get you anywhere. Plus, it messes up your day. It just catapults you and puts you in a place. You're not going to be able to talk. You don't want to talk to this person. Does this person really, they mean something to you? So just let's see if we can kind of move through that quickly with velocity and continue on and really, which really gets me present to what happened in the first place. Because sometimes I circle back around and go, wow, you know what? If I kind of went about this a different way, maybe the results would have been different. So what am I really angry? It's just an experience that happened.
Mm-hmm. I find if I speak to that, I find that when somebody, I'll just say when somebody deliberately pisses me off, or does something that occurs as inconsiderate, there's a whole world over there that's happening that we don't have inside information.
You mean from the other side?
Yeah. That we don't have inside. We didn't get the memo.
Right.
You're right.
What they're dealing with, how they woke up.
CNN didn't say this person is dealing with this today, so you really want to watch your step around. We didn't get all that information.
Right.
So they have a whole world over there, and we are not responsible for that world. It's just happening.
Right.
It's just happening, and thus for us to react in an angry way doesn't really create an environment where all that can change or and like you said earlier, we suffer.
Yeah.
We suffer because somebody is doing something that makes us angry, and they got a whole world over there that they're just trying to deal with.
And you wasted your time.
Yeah, exactly. Time and energy.
Yeah.
And compromising your healthy state in
your
that
healthy
moment.
State. That's
absolutely.
Yeah, that's another score for the other team.
Yeah. Right.
When you talk about cumulative, your body has a memory.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
And nothing to me is that deep that you can't get over.
Oh my God.
I mean, I've had some bad things happen to me, and I say this all the time. Who am I not to forgive? I'm given grace and forgiveness every day of my life.
Right.
Who am I not to forgive someone?
Exactly. Not to pass it on.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, really.
Right.
When you look at it.
Yeah. Interesting. Despite the fact of how pervasive it would seem that anger is, or inappropriate behaviors, and which exude anger in us, and as we see it, there's really no classification of anger in the psychiatric literature, the psychological literature, in terms of the DSM-4. I mean, the DSM-5.
What's DSM-5?
Yeah, what's that?
Is that a car?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Right. It's the new BMW.
I heard a DTM. That's German racing. I never heard of DSM.
It's a mental health professionals Bible, I guess you would call it.
Okay, enlighten us.
It comes every few years. Is
a new prophet every year?
No.
So it gets revised.
It gets revised, and so it's now at DSM-5. It has a lot of deficits and shortcomings, but that's the primary manual being used by mental health professionals in the West.
Wait a minute.
Primarily.
So does DSM mean deficit and shortcoming manual?
No, it means. Wow, I kind of.
Okay, all right. Don't worry. You don't have to.
But it's
like
audience has.
It's like a mental health Bible. It's like
yeah, absolutely.
And so it's been around how long?
It's been around since the 50s, 40s, 50s.
Okay.
Right.
And this is put out by a group of mental health experts?
Mental health experts, but more and more, that the mental health experts, but also pharmaceutical experts, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
People with vested interest in terms of steering the population towards certain disorders or identifying certain disorders needing
Which they like to say,
pharmaceutical
better
response.
living through chemicals.
Is
Yeah,
that
I
what they
mean,
like
but
to say?
you know,
That's
listen,
what they like to say.
I don't want to shoot down. I mean, we have chemicals. We have chemicals in our body.
Sure.
Exactly.
And so sometimes lack of, and I'm not I'm not a big, pharmaceutical fan,
Yeah.
but I do think it has some usage. Obviously, it helps.
Right.
When we lack in certain areas, it can replace. Now, I would think that the aim is to get you back on the right track if possible, naturally. But sometimes I guess that's not achievable. Depending on where you are, you might need. I have friends with anxiety. I have a friend. She's in the car and then she has anxiety for whatever reason, cars passing by, whatever reason. She's a fully capable, brilliant woman. I mean, and they're just brilliant. But she gets anxiety about certain things. I have friends who today, I called a friend of mine, and she's dealing with her child, her 17-year-old child, who sometimes has tantrums, and they get into this struggle, and it upsets her to the point of crying, and she's upset because it's upset the home, and she's trying to figure out how to deal with it in a sensible way, but not let this child disrupt the household. And so, there in those instances, there are different pharmaceuticals that they take that does seem to smooth things out and create some normalcy. I mean, it's a big subject. I mean, hats off to you, brother, for being in this field, because I can imagine it's not easy.
Well, yeah, that's for sure. I'll have to agree. I don't have too much rebuttal for that, but
right.
Yeah, but the point about the anger, is evident in many of the mental health disorders, but it doesn't have a classification of its own. So, like conduct disorder for kids, intermittent explosive disorder is another one, and then it manifests in terms of grief issues. Trauma issues, anxiety issues, the anger becomes a component of it, but it's not. It's a symptom of other things, but it's not the thing in itself as it's approached today in terms of the DSM manual or the DSM literature, as it were.
Do you see that as something that gets in the way of us being able to distinguish or manage it properly? In other words, do you think that's a shortcoming? Not being able to classify anger, by them not classifying that particular book, not necessarily classifying and breaking down anger. Do you see that as a shortcoming to the book based on your experience?
I think it's a shortcoming to the profession. Yeah, I think it's a shortcoming to the profession because as we began talking about, so many things seem to be fused or to be connected to anger issues, you know what I mean? Or that's what we talked about, the politics of anger. Who's profiting from the anger, you know what I mean? So, we get into the COVID, people profited from COVID, or if you approach it from that angle. But there's persons profiting from, as you said, anger disorders, or persons who have anger behavior, so they're prescribed different pharmaceutical, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
For curbing the behavior in children, which predisposes them towards addictive behavior in the future, possibly.
Possibly, right. So one thing begets the other. I mean, so what could someone, I'm just trying to figure out, what could you look out for? What would make us healthier people mentally? What could make us?
Good question.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I know some of it's
I'm sure you got an answer for that question, and it probably happens in a moment when you're walking, maybe away from a client, going to your car, whatever, and you're just saying, "Man, I wish people would just." And what is that?
Just tell me. Go
I'm
ahead.
asking you because
Yeah.
I'm sure, I'm sure, like a layman, somebody like myself or anybody saying, I wish people would just shut up, or I wish people would just listen, or I wish people would just love each other, or I wish people would just, there's just like this one thing that everybody wishes people would either do or be,
is there a healthy way of being mentally, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, just, creating a space to listen to someone. Like a lot of times we think that we're going to have something earth-shaking to say when the person's going through a traumatic situation or a grieving situation. Just being able to listen, you know what I mean? I was at a training and with these other folks and professionals. Is that?
Yeah, that's me. Go ahead.
Oh.
Continue, please.
Legal professionals or, police officers, sheriff's department, chaplains and so forth. So one guy was talking about how he talked somebody off the ledge, and I'm sure he has, but really it gives the wrong impression when you think about talking someone off the ledge. It's really the leverage is in listening someone off the ledge. You can listen someone off the ledge.
Wow, that's a nice distinction. Because you hear that, I talk someone off the ledge, but listening to someone off the ledge.
I mean, it's not that you don't talk, but the amount of time that you talk is so minimal.
Right.
It's basically you just relegated to listening.
Right.
You know what I mean? But you just interject just at the right time. You know what I mean? But the main thing is the fact that many people think that it's what you say. It's not necessarily what you say. It's the fact that you showed up, and the fact it's a reminder, as someone used regarding chaplains, but it can be applied to anybody. It's a reminder that God has not forgotten you or forsaken you.
Yeah.
Because you just showed up and said, I'm here to care.
And give someone the opportunity to get it out. Just to get it.
Instead of saying, what's wrong with you, where do you hurt?
Mm-hmm.
I remember. Yeah, I remember you shared with me that instance long ago when you were actually in a scenario of counseling youth. And you were talking about this one instance where a guy came in your office and he was pissed, and your response was, "So what did they do to you?"
Yeah.
Right. And all of a sudden he was like, "Oh, I can talk to you."
Yeah, right.
You on my side.
Right. Which you're giving me the opportunity to get. I often see people talking to themselves. We see street folks out there talking to themselves, and I think to myself, wow. They need to be heard. Like they're talking because maybe they've been holding that all in for so long.
Yeah.
And their need to get out and spit it out, regardless of who's listening, they just need to get it out. Because we keep, it's a lot of times we keep a lot in. We keep a lot. I have a therapist, and people are like, well, what are you getting out of your therapy? I just get to share. I mean, a big part of it is that I look forward to letting that out, not keeping that in. And sometimes, I didn't get a chance to throughout the week or whenever I talk to them, I haven't gotten a chance to speak it out, but it's been rolling around in my head, And now, I mean, we do that, our conversations, just getting those conversations.
Yeah.
And that's partly why we do this podcast. Is to really, give people a chance to listen and hear these kinds of conversations that might add, to their lives, their thoughts.
Yeah, and part of why we do this is so that you can feel confident about sharing yourself with others in such a way that it makes a difference for you and for them. And you've heard of the trickle down theory with Reaganomics. Well, hopefully this can trickle up.
Trickle up.
And be pervasive in some way that it makes a difference for the whole planet. Yeah, so that's what we're about here at Not Your Common Conversation.
That's right. So Lateef, thank you, man. Thank you for your generosity. We're gonna come to a close, but is there anything that you want to share with us? You want to impart on us, the audience, anything?
Well, I think that hats off to you all for having the vested interest in terms of making this forum or format available. I think that the more that that this has become a new norm or a way of norming, it destigmatizes, the whole conversations. People need to have safe places, safe spaces, and safe people that they can, go to or just unload with, you know what I mean? And it might be very demanding and draining on us on some level, but we're really doing a service to not just only to humanity, but to ourselves. Whenever I deal with a client, I really do believe that the client really has the answer most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the fact that there's a cloud, there's a curtain, there's something obstructing them. They're accessing it.
Yeah.
And that if we just take time to help them usher through that corridor, not so much because we have so much ABC trainings or whatever the case is, but because we care. We really genuinely care that we can help guide them toward the point of discovery that they had within themselves already.
Listening to you, I created, you talked about safe place, safe space, right?
Yeah.
And so, it just being grandiose, what if we created the world as a safe space? Like the whole world is a safe space.
That's huge.
It's huge, right? It's huge, right? But
where would you start?
Yeah, we can start
right here in this room. When I go home with the wife, you gotta start. You start.
Sure.
You start where you're at. You don't go knocking on the door. Hey, Biden.
You start where you're at. Right. You start.
Get out here.
You start.
That totally annihilates the idea. Get out here. I got an idea,
right.
idiot.
Right.
Yeah.
No, you can't do that. But you start where you're at.
You start where you are.
Yeah, it's
each day, each person. Yeah.
You start where you're at, man. That's it.
Yeah. Everybody matters.
Everybody matters.
Right.
So
this was good.
This was good. Thank you, audience,
right.
folks
Thanks.
out there for joining us.
Well, thank you.
On another installment of Not Your Common Conversation.
Yeah, you lucky listeners, you.
Have a great day. Peace.
Got Chris in the booth, got Omar too. All the lucky listeners know we do it for you. Not your common conversations, back with the new. And we speaking the truth like they need us to do. Ain't not your common conversation, not your common conversation, not your common